Okay, I'm going to try to do a quick demo of Lab 5.1 entitled Debugging Business Rules. It's from page 219 of the ebook, Scripting in ServiceNow Fundamentals. It is quite a long lab, so I'm going to try to speed through it. So we're going to look at a number of ways to debug business rules. The good thing about this lab is that there's not much scripting that we need to write. There's a ready-made lab that we're going to work on and make a couple of amendments and analyze and debug. So first thing is we need to search for the business rule. So we need to type in business rule, and under system definition we click on business rules. This page, when we come to this page, then if we click on this magnifying glass, it's a good way to search for items. You can search in any of these fields. So the name that we're looking for is Lab 5.1 business rule debugging. So if I just put Lab 5.1 and press return or enter, we find it. It's currently not active. Its active state is false. So first thing we do is we open the business rule. We need to make it active. So this is the advanced tab, and interesting to note that the condition for this business rule to run, it's based on the table incident, but the condition is that the current state of the incident must not be 7. Now I've just added at the bottom of my version some additional information just for guidance. These are the main states that a incident ticket goes through: new, in progress, on hold, and end of life states are resolved, closed, and cancelled. So the number 7 state is closed. So this incident ticket will not run if it is closed. So that's something that would be helpful if you bear in mind. So first thing that we've been asked to do, or the next thing we've been asked to do as number 4A4 is to override the initials in line 16. So this gs.info, the initials here by default are JB, and just change these initials to your own initials for reference, and then we save the record. Next, what we've been asked to do is to save this business rule itself, and so if we go to the context menu, go to create favorite, there is the name. If you want to shorten it, you can. You can select the color of your own choice. You can select an icon of your own choice. This is the default icon. As I said, you can select any that you wish and click on done. So next we are going to go into section B on page 219, which is practice using the script debugger, breakpoints and variables. So here what we've been asked to do is click on the far right hand option here, which is to open the script debugger. So if we click on that, and then we notice that this is the script debugger has turned off. The only way around this F2 does not tend to work, so the only way around it is that you close this window and you go back, and that may happen time to time, so just be aware of that. So you just click on it again and it initializes. it tends to open in a non-full screen, and it can at times get a bit erratic, so just open it into full window. You might or might not have this script includes element, so if you don't worry, ignore that for the time being. So the next we've been asked to introduce some breakpoints. How do we do that? We go to the left hand side of the code pane and we insert them by simply clicking on the number. So we've been asked to insert one at number 2. In fact, this exercise we were asked to do in the first page. So if I actually go back to where the script is, and if I insert it here and here and here, and then this is already activated, so that's what we would activate next. But then if I go back to the script debugger, we can see that what we present there is reflected on this side, and in addition we can add further breakpoints here, like we've been asked to do, to add number 8 breakpoint. So the interesting thing about this debugging process with these breakpoints is that we will get a reading each time it moves to a particular breakpoint. Those breakpoints are reflected on this side as well under breakpoints, and of course we can see them visible here. So the script will run up to stop before the implementation of the function at line 2, and then we can look at what are the readings, for example, of the current state, ynum, etc. And then we can move on to the next one and see, whether what data has changed in any of the records that are being monitored, and so forth, and we can go through the whole process and see if we get an unexpected output or error in between any of the functions. So next we are asked in number 6 to initiate, to force lab 5.1 business rule to execute, and for that we need to go and open an active incident ticket and change the value to any state other than closed, because in the state closed it does not operate. So let's go back to our option here and just click on duplicate in order to open an incident ticket, and if I type in incident and if I click on all, and I'm looking for an incident, let's say a new one, and then the easiest thing for me to do would be just to put it in progress. So if I change the state now to in progress, now if I go back to the business rule, I should see a message to say start debugging, but it looks like the debugger is not open. So if I check the debugger again, and it is no longer active. So we have to close this because it appears not to be functioning. We again, let's close the ticket. And let's go back to the debugger. Let's open the script debugger again. Let's enlarge it and again go back to the other window to open another incident ticket. So again open an incident ticket, take 2. This does happen, so you have to be patient with the debugger. Click on in progress and then save. That's actually what I missed last time. So if we go to the script rule and we click on start debugging, so it's moved to the first stage and it's given us some outputs and it's paused on the first breakpoint. So normally it would just proceed through the whole script, but the good thing is it's paused so that we can analyze step by step. So next we've been asked to examine the value of my_num variable in local variables. So don't make the mistake to go to global, just look on local and look out for my_num, and we can see it's undefined. So what is the reason it's undefined? Because it's at the moment the script's only run and stopped before executing this variable my_num function, and so currently the state is going to be undefined because it's not proceeded past that to pick up what is the current state. So now we're going to run this debugging to the next breakpoint by clicking on play here, and it moves to the next one, and then if we look at the my_num value, it's gone to 2. So state 2 is in progress. As you can see, this is the additional information I had added in the commented out. So in progress it has a value of 2, and that is what is being indicated here. So next, as per B13 on page 222, we are asked to review the created value, which we can see here, and the priority value, which is here, both that remain as undefined, because at the moment we haven't proceeded to this stage. So let's move on to the next stage. So here we are on 6, and we are prior to the execution of created value. So here again we see that the created value remains undefined and the priority value has changed to 5. So we then move on to the next stage, and we see that the created value is now a date has been defined, a date and timestamp, and the priority value remains at 5. And if we click, it then completes the process. So as part of C, what we on page 222, we are going to open an incident ticket, which again, if we just go to all tickets, and we have to, again, to initialize the business rule, we have to change the state to anything but closed and save it. So I'm going to again just so here what we've been asked to do is make sure that the short description does not include this text set by lab 5.1, because that's already been the business rule has already operated on it. So we're going to go for another one, and we're going to change the state to anything but closed. So in progress is the easiest one, and we're then going to save the record. And then when we go back to the business rule, we see this start debugger option that comes up, because that business rule has been initiated, and we click on start debugging. We go to this screen and it's on the first breakpoint. So here the interesting thing we're going to look at is the state value before and after at the different breakpoints, and the one that we're going to be looking out for is the short description code. So if we again ignore global, look at local, and we're going to go to the current glide record, and then we're going to go to the previous. Let's go to the previous one first, and we go down to S to look for the short description field, and it says cassette player is broken. So that's what was shown in the incident ticket we opened. Now if we go back up to current, we see what it says. Go back down to short description, so just go through to S, and it says this text set by lab 5.1 rule debugging. So it seems that it's already been initialized, which is interesting. But if we move on, again at stage 2, the current is this text has set by the lab 5.1, and in the previous it will say cassette player is broken. So if we move on to the next one, again cassette player is broken for the previous, and the current is showing, this text set by lab 5.1, and again we move on, and it's the same in the current. This text is set by lab 5.1, and in the previous cassette player is broken. So I'm not sure. I was expecting that the first stage onto the previous as well as current would have said cassette player is broken. So I'm not sure if this one has been used before, but that the interesting part here is that you can at any of the breakpoints see what is the value of a particular field, and in this case we were looking at the short description field because the business rule was going to operate on that field to insert this text, which is this text set by lab 5.1 business rule debugging BR. BR stands for business rule, and it was going to insert that if anyone was going to open an incident ticket and change it to any state other than closed. So we can now close the debugger, and that concludes this part of the lab, and next we will move on to D on page 223. In section D, which is on page 224, it's actually called practice using the script debugger call stack. So this is where another server-side script will be used, a script include, to interact with this current script, and then we will see what happens. So we need to go to system include, so I'm going to create another tab, duplicate, and in the filter navigator I'm going to search for script includes under system definition. So we need to search for one called SLA target notification. So insert SLA target n, turn, and this is the one we are looking for. We open it up and we are going to insert a breakpoint in this one. So we are then going to open the script debugger. And you can see that the script debugger has got indicated the same breakpoint in this window here. Next we need to go to the original script that we were working on from the business rule, and that is Lab 5.1 Business Rule Debugger. We are going to select any breakpoint from here so that it engages with the script debugger. We go back to the script debugger, and then if we select Business Rule 5.1, we can see where we selected it on the other side. So now we are going to unselect this random one, and we've been asked to select 0.6, creative value, current sys created on, and on try on line 12. So next we are going to initiate the business rule by opening a incident ticket. So again, go to the other window. I create another duplicate, search for incident, open all. So I need an incident ticket and to change the state value to anything except closed. So I'm going to get one that is new, and I'm going to put it in progress. If you don't have a new one, you can create a new one. So I'm going to put this in progress and save but not submit. So if I go back to the business rule, and it says so after the incident ticket, the status is changed. The start debugger comes up on the script. You click on start debugging, and here we can see the start script debugger. Here we can see that this business rule relates to Lab 5.1 business rule debugging. It's also indicated here, line 6 business rule, and so this is aligned with that. If we again click on call stack, we can see this other one is unrelated. If we then move on to the next one, so we can see that this has now gone to script includes. So in the same script debugger, we can see that there are two independent business rules where this script debugger is reading both of them, because we've engaged both of them into this script debugger. And again here, line 4, it says script include. So, and this is the other one, where it says business rule and Lab 5.1 business rule debugging. So this pretty much covers the D8, 9, 10, and also we can see the transaction details. So this is the business rule, and we can go through, and this itemizes a lot of the details regarding this particular script. And again, the same can be seen for the script includes the transaction details here. And if we progress the script debugger one last time, we see it goes to try, and again it's come back to business rule lab 5.1 rule debugging, which again we can see here line 12 business rule. So, and again the transaction details will be related to this same business rule. So we jumped from lab 5.1 to script includes and back to lab 5.1, and that concludes section D, and next we will be moving on to section E, entitled Practice Debugging Using Glide System Logging Methods, which is on page 226. So with the next method of debugging, we're going to remove these breakpoints, any remaining breakpoints, and instead we're going to use this try and catch function. And note that there are two functions that we are going to be looking into. One is on line 13. This function does not exist. It's an undefined function. Another is on line 20, which is this function also does not exist. So notice that this function, the one on line 12, that is in between the try and catch, and so we should be able to pick up an error for it. Again, notice that these are my initials, so that we can search in an easier way for this output. However, this function, which is not defined, is outside the try and catch. So we will next initiate the process by opening an active ticket and changing its value to anything other than state 7, which is closed. So let's duplicate this tab and let's search for incident. Let me just refresh this, running a bit slow. And I'm going to search for incident, or I'm going to select a incident that is new, and I'm going to put it in progress, save, and now next I'm going to again make another duplicate, and I'm going to this time search for script log, script log, statements, which is within system log, which is again under system logs. So when we open this, we can see that here the first entry with my initials MA, we have the output of that find and catch function, try and catch function, and it says this function does not exist, is not defined. Again, if I wanted to search, I could do a search here for MA. I could see any of the instances with my initials that have come up. I could search for, in order to also try to search for the other, this function also does not exist. Let's do a search for this function. Try that again. This function. So that is not coming up. Let's do an alternative search. Say message contains this function. And here we can see that this function also does not exist, is not defined, is coming up with another error. But this error is not related to the try and catch, which is outputted by the MA initial. So that concludes the E section of this lab, and next we will be starting the F category, which is defined as practice debugging using script tracer. So here we're now going to search for script tracer. Which is under System Diagnostics, and here we're going to start tracer. Now we're going to go and create a new incident ticket. And we're going to put this in the name of Joe employee. We're going to select category hardware and enter the short description cassette player is broken, and we're going to save this. So now we're going to go to the script tracer. Just expand this to full page. And next we're going to find this second occurrence of save UA actions, which is this one, UI actions. Click on that, and then we can see that this does indeed relate to short description field cassette player is broken and the category is hardware. So this is the incident that we've just raised. Also on this, there's in addition to the state tab, there's the script tab, and there's the transaction tab. So here, for example, we can see the instant this was done in was my Now Learning account. This is my IP address. Here we can see again the incident caller ID. We can see the incident shortcode description cassette player is broken. We can see the sys display incident caller ID Joe employee. We can see, throughout the history of, again, the incident category hardware, and so forth. It goes through the whole lot of details, and here we have the user, which is admin. So next, if we have a look at, again, category here is hardware. Now if we select the business rule when it's activated, Lab 5.1 business rule, we see that there's an error, this function does not exist. And again, here is the script for it, and here is the transaction. So prior to that, I wanted to show you actually the first occurrence of Lab 5.1 is not line 17 but line 16. So let's click on that, and here we can see that the state as per the business rule has changed from cassette player is broken to this text set by the Lab 5.1 business rule debugging BR. So this business rule has activated and the short description has changed accordingly. We can now move on to the final section of this lab, which is G, entitled Practice Debugging Using the Debug Business Rule feature, which is on page 229. Firstly, we can close this script debugger, and if we search for debug business rules, debug business rules, which is under session debug, so we are going to open an incident ticket. So let's go back to the other tab, and let's go to all incidents. This time we're actually going to open a incident ticket which is in closed state. So this is closed. Now the grayed out areas we can't amend because it's closed, but I am going to make a change to a closed ticket. I'm just going to put an entry in the description, say this is a test of amending a closed incident ticket. So I'm going to save this, And now, so let's see if we can see the occurrence in the log. So this is the session log tab. And we will not be able to find the occurrence of lab 5.1 business rule debugger because the change that we've made is we made a change in state 7, which is closed, and the business rule does not apply to state 7, which is closed. So this concludes the lab, and now we can close the debugger and we can stop the debugging. So we close this, and then we can search for stop debugging, which is under debugging, which is under system security. And that then has stopped the debugging, and we can conclude the lab. The one last final step to do is to go back to the lab 5.1 business rule debugging and make it inactive and update it. Thank you.